Hi, welcome back. We're going to be talking about adding a reset.css into your project. First thing you're going to ask me is, Adrian, what is a reset.css? Well, I'm going to show you a little bit about HTML. So one of the great things about HTML is it's so flexible and really is amazing because by adding CSS, we can add so much visual styles to it. But the problem with HTML is that it actually comes along with some baggage to it. And as a designer, if we're going to create a great, amazing web page, we really want to sort of work around that baggage. So what I'm going to do is I added some basic code into my document. And we're going to add a little bit more just to show you. I've added a bold tag. I'm going to say this is bold. I added a paragraph tag. I added some really basic headers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop these into here. So we just created a really, really simple page. I'm going to go back to my browser and we're going to reload this page again to see this wonderful page at work. So let's take a look at this. I will close the inspector and I'm going to reload the page. And here's a really basic page. You notice there's one thing that happened. I keep on saying HTML is really text and it's a really, really clean, simple code. But all of a sudden, you notice that there's some characteristics that are already built in. Inherently, HTML is a core programming language that has a couple of characteristics. Things like headers actually make reference to font sizes and font widths. The bold tag makes things bold. The underline tag makes things underlined. And the paragraph tag, without you asking for it, automatically adds padding and margins to it. Usually the not most helpful things. Prior in the past, what we would have to do is add another pile of CSS to try to retrofit and zero out a lot of this here. We really, when we're working with HTML and a great visual design, is we really want to start with something from scratch. We want to start with a base layer. We want to strip out as much of this as humanly possible so that we can start adding the CSS. Instead of adding CSS to turn things off, we want to be additive. Instead of being subtractive, we want to add onto the code to make it cleaner. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of a lot of these pre-built styles. And this is where the reset.css style comes in. One of the things that I love about Google is if you type in reset.css, guess what? You're not the only one. This is something that we commonly use before, and this is a great way. I'm going to click this open here, and I'm just going to copy this reset.css code into a browser. I love this. You can find anything online. And remember, we are not going to be reinventing the wheel here. We want to use enough reference documents as humanly possible to do a lot of this work for us. So I'm going to create a brand new file. I'm going to copy that reset CSS code inside of it. And let's actually save this into our CSS. Let's call it reset.css. I'm going to copy the name. I'm going to hit save. And you notice that this comes up here. What does the reset CSS do for us? It takes every tag that's humanly possible that you're going to find in HTML and then adds margin to 0, padding to 0, border to 0, font size to 100%. It really tries to zero out and clean up a lot of these attributes that you'll find in HTML. I'm going to come back into my index.html and now I'm going to apply it to my style. One of the amazing things about how HTML and browsers read files is it reads it actually from top to bottom. Just like a line. It goes through line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5. So if something's ever broken, let's say in line 17, it's actually going to not display anything past line 17 or 18. So you're going to actually see when you see a web page that's partially loaded, this is where the issue comes from, is that it breaks in the middle of the loading. And the CSS actually loads the same way. This is why CSS is loaded in the header, because as the browser connects, it asks for instructions from the page. Are there any meta tags? Are there any JavaScript? Are there any CSS that I need to load up first? And then as I load in line by line by line by line, it'll be actually loading in these elements with the styles attached to them. So if we're talking about that same fashion about turning things off, we're going to want to actually take our reset.css style sheet and actually add it to our header. And what we want to do is we want to actually add it right above the main.css. And the power of this is that it's going to load in our reset.css first, and then it's going to load in our main.css. Again, it's loading in line by line by line from top to bottom. So of course, we're going to take the reset first. It's going to zero out everything, and then it's going to apply our styles. So now I've added a reset. I keep my reset.css in one tab, my index, my main.css that's empty. Let's go back to the browser window. I'm going to reload the page, and voila, like magic, all those attributes, all the bolds, all the margins, all the paragraph, all the font sizes disappear. Now we can actually start from scratch. And this is really the most amazing thing, is now we're looking at CSS as being additive. We're actually adding on top. We're going to be adding our own margins, our own paragraphs, our own widths, our own colors. We could actually even decide if a bold is a bold or an underline is an underline. In this case, you notice that all the paragraphs have been wiped out. Everything, the bold has been wiped out. Bold is no longer bold. Italics is no longer italics. And really, this is the power of the reset, is being able to zero out a lot of this baggage for us to start with a clean slate. So now that we have a clean slate, we can start talking about how the syntax works and how we're actually going to start inserting CSS little by little.